For Oasis Audio, I'm Wayne Shepherd, privileged to have Major Jeff Struecker, U.S. Army retired, on the line with me, the co-author of a new work of fiction titled Hide and Seek. Major Struecker, thank you for your time today. I want to talk to you about this new book, but your military career is so stirring, I just got to start by saying thank you for your service to our country.
Well, that's very kind of you to say, Wayne.
I'm a little bit tongue-tied talking to you after reading your bio, Jeff. You gave me permission to call you Jeff, and you got to tell me about this career you've had in the military.
I'll try to break it up into two halves for you if you'd like. I spent 13 years as an infantryman and 10 of those 13 years in special operations, specifically with the Army Rangers. And then as a result of the combat experiences that I went through as an Army Ranger, God called me to the ministry, and I spent my last 10 years in the Army as an active duty Army chaplain.
Mm-hmm. Well, when you say special forces, that gets our attention immediately. That's kind of an elite operation. Talk more about the kinds of things you're involved in as much as you can.
Well, the term special operations is kind of an umbrella term in the U.S. military. And it basically all of the forces in the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and the Marines who do special or unconventional missions, they're considered the special operations forces. So you have Marines, Special Operations Command. In the Air Force, you have predominantly combat control teams and pararescue jumpers. The Navy, of course, has Navy SEALs and a couple of other special operations units. And then in the Army, you have the Green Berets, Special Forces, as you just referred to them, the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, and then Airborne Rangers, and there are a couple of other clandestine counterterrorism units in the Army. Mm-hmm. But that's the umbrella term of the Special Operations, and Rangers are one of the multitude of tools that the U.S. military has in its kit bag to use around the world.
So what were some of the operations you were involved in through the years? As
an enlisted guy, I took part during the invasion of Panama, Operation Just Cause. I was also involved in Operation Desert Storm in Kuwait, but a life-changing event for me was the couple of months that I spent in Mogadishu, Somalia, as part of Task Force Ranger, and the events that ended up in the book and the movie Black Hawk Down.
Yeah, I was going to say everybody knows about Black Hawk Down, and well, tell me a bit more in detail about that experience for you and what it meant for you.
Yeah, first for the listeners, I would like for them to know that I had a very strong faith in Christ before I joined the Army, since I was a 13-year-old boy. And when I joined the military, I was looking for a challenge. I certainly found that with the Rangers.
I guess. Yeah.
I was looking for a chance to test myself against myself and to just see what I was made out of. But lastly, I wanted to have a chance to go overseas and to be placed in harm's way and to see if I was able to meet those kind of demands. And when I was in Somalia, my Christian faith, my walk with Jesus Christ, literally transformed the way that I conducted myself on the battlefield. I viewed myself differently. I understood my role in the operation a bit differently because of my Christian faith. But the pivotal event for me, though I was in the firefight the entire time that we were, the big 18-hour firefight, I was involved in all of it, leading the Humvees through the city streets and all of that. For me, the pivotal event was the day after the big firefight, because it was the day after that firefight that many of the men in my unit who knew about my faith and who never wanted to talk to me about Christ before that event were literally lined up waiting to talk to me at points immediately after it was over with, saying, Jeff, I saw that there was something different about you, and I want to know what it was. And God gave me some incredible opportunities to share my faith with those special operators after the big firefight was over with.
You must have been so honored to be in that position.
I was, and for me, I consider that my call to ministry, because it was, though I've never heard the audible voice of God, it was fairly clear in my mind that God was leading me to become a minister and to spend the rest of my life serving Jesus full time.
So that was a turning point for you.
Yeah, it was the day after the firefight that was a turning point. Most people think you got shot and you got scared at, and no, that wasn't it. It was the day after getting shot and getting scared at.
Getting shot at or getting shot?
Get shot at.
Okay.
You
weren't wounded.
I don't know how to explain this, but I walked away from that without a scratch.
Oh, boy. Well, I got to ask you then, how do we pray for men who were in positions like you were in at that time?
Yeah, thank you so much for asking that question, because they definitely needs your prayers. There are men and women who are serving right now in harm's way, probably in Afghanistan and certainly in many other dark places around the world. And what they need is they need to know that their country supports them. They need to know that we're proud of them. But they're going to be tested in some ways morally and ethically, but in almost every circumstance, they're going to be tested physically and emotionally. And you can pray that God will make them able to endure the pressures that combat is going to place on them.
Given the career that you had in the military before moving into the chaplaincy program, did that sort of give you extra chops with the guys, so to speak?
It did, and I took this very, very seriously. I understood that when I walked into a room, most of the guys were going to recognize my name, even if I've never met them before. They would see the stuff that I wore on my uniform, and they would immediately give me credibility that many other chaplains had to work really hard to get. And as a result, I tried never to let those guys down, and I tried to use those opportunities to exalt Christ.
Well, Jeff, I want to come back to talk more about your military experience because you are in such a unique position, but I also want to talk about this book and the others that you've written. Hide and Seek is not your first work of fiction.
No, it's number 4 in a series. There'll probably end up being 5 in this series, and each book is designed to stand on its own, but we would hope, and you don't have to pick them up in order, we would hope that if you read any one of them, it will get you hooked and you'll want to read the rest of them. But
obviously they are based on your experience, your considerable experience in the U.S. military.
Yeah, so one of the questions that I get asked most often about this series of books is there's a character in this series who I personally think the world of. His name is J.J. And J.J. is a guy who loves God and who loves guns and explosives. And most people say, hey, is that guy, is he you? And I said, well, though he may not be me personally, there's a lot of me in J.J.
Where does that come from, guns and explosives?
I've been a guy all my life who's been a fan of the military. Actually, my heroes are warriors. They have been since I was very young. And I like danger. I like adrenaline, I like action, and I love Christ. And for me, I've never seen a philosophical or a personal issue with being a warrior and being a believer at the same time. So Al Ganske and I tried to put this together in the character of J.J., and I want to tell you that I think we have nailed it. I think we've got a guy who's very accurate and depicts a number of men serving in the military right now.
I mentioned that you co-authored this book. Al Ganske is the other author. And how do the two of you work together on this?
Let me tell you, I am so thrilled to be working with Al. First, because he's a very accomplished writer. And the way that this process normally works is we together kind of come up with a concept. And I'm the guy who comes up with the plot and the story. And then Al starts to put it on paper. And then as he's putting it on paper, we email and we talk back and forth. He's on one side of the country, I'm on the other. And we kind of develop the story as it goes along. But Al is the guy who puts flesh, so to speak, on the story. And what's amazed me about Al's ability is that he thinks now like a soldier. I mean, in many cases, when I'm reading the rough cut of what he's put, I think to myself, that's exactly what a soldier would do. And Al thinks now like a soldier, and I think it's just because he is so competent at what he does.
I wanted to ask you about that because I wonder if someone who has not had the experience that you've had could possibly write with the detail that you write about.
Yeah, I got to tell you, we have to walk a fine line because Al and I are intentionally trying to be as accurate as we can about today's military, about techniques, about equipment, about the philosophy, and about the mindset of the warrior today. But we obviously can't violate national security. Mm-hmm. And there's still a lot of national security secrets going around in my head. So Al and I both walk a very tight line. We want to share as much as we can with the reader without compromising the military. And I think you've got about as close as you can get in these books.
Do you have to clear any of this with anyone?
Yeah, in almost every book I've had extensive people who, both from the public affairs, military intelligence, and other arenas, who've looked at it and said, yeah, we give it our thumbs up. And only on one or two occasions has somebody said, ooh, you really shouldn't put that in there.
Does any of that cause you to, for lack of a better word, flash back to some of the things that you went through?
I can recall the events of Somalia literally right now like it just happened yesterday. I can recall much of the invasion of Panama or of Desert Storm. And for the listener, I deployed 9 times with the Rangers as a chaplain with the Rangers and paratroopers from the 82nd Airborne Division as a chaplain to Iraq, or to Afghanistan 9 times, and 5 times to Iraq. And I can remember most of those deployments like they were pretty recent. And so, quite frankly, a lot of the scenes that we write about in those books, those come from literal things that I've been through or guys that I know have been through. And we've just changed the location and changed the names.
Let me change gears and go back to your military career as a family man. How do you balance that? At what point were you married and began to have children as a part of the military?
I married my high school sweetheart. She and I started dating. Dawn, my wife, she and I started dating when she just turned 16, and I was 18 and already had enlisted in the Army, but still in high school. And then we carried on a 4-year long-distance relationship. But she and I have been married now 21 years. We have 5 children, our oldest of which just graduated from high school. And the question that you just asked is probably the most it's one of the most often asked questions that I've got in my entire life as a soldier, and probably one of the most difficult questions to answer. I think every guy who's serious about his faith, serious about his family, and serious about what he does for a living, and I don't mean just the military, but certainly the military, they're asking, how do you balance all of these things? And I'm not sure that I even know the right answers to that. I do know that it's, to some degree, you figure it out for you, and what works for you may not work for me. But I often tell people, if you're asking that question right now, that tells me that your heart is in the right place. If you're not even asking, if you're unconcerned about that, your heart's probably not in the right place, and you probably are too focused in one area and not focused enough on the others.
Our military families have certainly been under incredible stress the last 10-plus years, haven't they?
Yeah, and Al and I have intentionally worked more plot line in all of our books into what's happening back at home when those guys are overseas and getting shot at. And we did that on purpose because I want the readers to see some of the greatest heroes in this recent war. The recent wars have been what I call the hidden heroes at home that nobody knows about because they're not on the front lines and they're not getting shot at. But they're really the ones who are keeping it all together, and in some cases under incredible stress with no one there to help them out. And we paint a very accurate picture of what the military family goes through, and it's overwhelming. Even
after they come home. Is it called PTSD?
Yeah, well, post-traumatic stress disorder is the term, yes. And there are many men and women who struggle with what they've gone through or what they've seen personally in combat.
And are you able to counsel men like that, and women, I suppose?
Some of the most often asked questions that I've been getting recently are, how do we help warriors who are dealing with this? And I've been asked that by a lot of warriors who are struggling with it personally, and now what I'm trying to do is educate pastors and church leaders about how they can effectively minister to people who are struggling with what they've seen in combat. So, yeah, I get that question a lot.
Jeff, you've written these books, including this newest, Hide and Seek, certainly not just to tell a story. That's a big part of it, but you must have a hope in your heart for these books. What do you hope happens when people read them or listen to them?
Yeah, so I'm going to give you a secret now. I have an agenda behind this whole series of books. It's a twofold agenda.
I thought you might. Yeah, okay.
The agenda is first that I want to educate the reader on just how incredible the military family is, the warrior and his family. And I hope that when the readers put the books down, they're in awe of the men and women who serve the country. And again, I've tried to make these books as accurate as possible. So if you respect the people in these books, then you really should respect the U.S. military and their families, because these books are that accurate. But secondly, I want people to see real folks struggling with the real issues of life, and in some cases struggling with their faith. So we have J.J. as one of these characters who he sometimes has difficulty with what he's being asked to do and reconciling that with his Christian faith. We show characters in the book who are not sure what they believe about God, and who may meet him in the next few minutes because they're in a firefight. And I try to be really honest about faith, about Christ, and about the military family. And I hope that when people put it down, these books, they will also be challenged to think really hard about their faith and where they stand with Christ.
We haven't talked about what you're doing now that you have retired from the military, Jeff.
I am co-pastor of Calvary Baptist Church in Columbus, Georgia. We're right outside of Fort Benning, and I spent about 15 out of almost 23 years in the Army at Fort Benning serving with Rangers.
So you're right at home.
I am. I'm close to Rangers. When it came time to retire, Dawn and I both decided we want to be close to this community. I love Rangers. I want to spend the rest of my life around them. I can't be a Ranger forever, so I want to just serve them forever, and that's why I'm now co-pastor of a church right outside of the Ranger headquarters of the universe.
But that likely means that you went to seminary. How and when did you squeeze that in?
For 3 years, I taught ROTC at the University of Louisville in Louisville, Kentucky, and on my spare time, I went to seminary at the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary.
Okay, spare time, right, okay.
Did almost all of it in that 3-year period of time at night and on the weekends.
Well, God has uniquely qualified you to do what you do. I can see that easily. You must really enjoy it.
I do. I love it. Couldn't imagine doing anything else.
It's your calling.
It is.
Yeah. Well, I'm delighted to get to know you, and I'm glad listeners get to know you now as they enjoy your book, Hide and Seek, and perhaps the others as well as they have opportunity. Jeff, I don't want to let you go without talking about your website, an extensive website, really, not just for the books, but to talk about the things we've been talking about today and in terms of helping military families. Yeah, I'm trying to educate people with this website as much as describe for them books and stuff like that. So my website is jeffstruecker.com. That's spelled Struecker, jeffstruecker.com. And you're welcome to check out more information about being in the military, what it means to serve Christ, and about the other books that I've written. So anyone who has family members and friends in the military, or any pastor or staff member who wants to help counsel members of the military, can come to your website for resources. Yeah, that's exactly right. I want the website to be a resource for people. All right, give us the address one more time. It's jeffstruecker.com, and the last name is spelled Struecker. Excellent. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a real encouragement to talk to you. And again, thanks for your service to our country. And now, of course, as always, thanks to your service to Christ and His church. Thank you, Wayne. Have a great day. Jeff Struecker, the author of Hide and Seek, along with Al Ganske. Published in print by B&H Publishing, Broadman and Holman, and now as an audiobook from Oasis Audio. And for Oasis Audio, I'm Wayne Shepherd.